And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that.
The hypocrisy of the cult is one of the things that turned me away the quickest.
When I turned my headlights on, it turned and looked at us, and one of the things I remember the most were the eyes were glowing red.
I see an orb of light. It is just circling these steps like it is waiting for me.
And he begins to tell them that he saw a UFO. They're basically like, what are you talking about? That's 7 foot up on a tree, peeking around it, and that's where I saw the top of the muzzle, nose, and the eyes. As soon as I made eye contact with this thing, it felt like death.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're joined by my guest, John. John, thanks for coming on here and talking with me.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Would you like to let the audience know a little bit about yourself before we get into it?
Well, sure. I mean, if you want to go free form, I'll tell you that I am a businessman. I have a production company where I make motion pictures, television, stage productions, and other things, mostly related to the old character of Zorro. However, I began my business as a producer. As a way to originally work my way through school. I wanted to be an academic. I was working on a doctorate. And it took me some while to realize that that essentially I'm going to end up being a minor movie mogul instead of the professor I thought I was going to set out to be. In the meantime, my interests changed over the years. And I've always been an amateur astronomer, but then I became involved with the field of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. When I joined the SETI Institute board of directors in the year 2000 and eventually served 3 terms as a chairman of that board. So from there, I went on to head a group dedicated to the proposition of raising $100 million for SETI research worldwide. My vice chairman was Frank Drake, who founded SETI, and we had a couple of Nobel laureates on the board and a MacArthur Genius Fellow. And anyway, but we eventually, when Yuri Milner stepped forward with a $100 million grant, as administered through Breakthrough Listen, his Breakthrough Foundation, we folded our efforts into his, and most of our board members either became principal investigators for Breakthrough Listen, which was and still is the largest SETI program in the world. And others, like myself, became members of the advisory board and advising on how best to spend that $100 million. So that brings you a little bit up to date. But about some years ago, I decided to segue from the business side of SETI into the theoretical side by writing a number of theoretical papers, which were peer-reviewed and published. And that eventually led to the writing of a book entitled Reinventing SETI, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And that book has just been released by Oxford University Press. And even though it's been released by a prestigious academic press, it's actually written for lay people. And my idealized reader is something like a 30-year-old congressional staffer, let's say, because I'm really, at the end of the day, trying to influence public policy vis-a-vis aliens. So that gives you a little bit of background on me.
You've been a man of many hats, it sounds like.
Yes, I think so.
So the stuff with SETI, that is one of the things that really gets me interested. But you were said chairman of the board for that for 3 terms. How did you even get involved with SETI from the get-go? Like, was this something you were interested in, like with extraterrestrials prior to this, or just something that you kind of got involved with?
Well, as I said, I was an amateur astronomer, and I was very interested in the field of SETI. Had read, a number of books in the field, um, and I happen to live in Berkeley, California. Well, Berkeley was then and still is a major, major locus of SETI research in the world. And I met through social contacts Jill Tarter, who was the head of the SETI program at the SETI Institute, who lives here in Berkeley. Um, and she and I had dinner together with her late husband, Jack Welsh, who was the head of the um, radio astronomy program at UC Berkeley. And they wanted to, frankly, to be honest with you, what they wanted to do is they wanted to solicit me for money to help build what was then on the drawing boards their new vision for a SETI telescope, which eventually was built and is called the ATA, or the Allen Telescope Array, named after the largest benefactor, Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft. And after the dinner that we had, I think Jill and her husband Jack realized that I actually had a very good layman's understanding of their field. And so when they came to ask me for money, I said, "Listen, Jill, you're being penny wise but pound stupid. Actually, invite me onto your board. That way, I can help multiply the dollars. I'm an entrepreneur, and you need entrepreneurial talent on your board. I've worked with many nonprofits before. I had served on about 10 nonprofit boards, and I understood nonprofits, and I have a good understanding of SETI. So invite me onto your board." Well, it led to a lot of conversations. And maybe a year later, I actually was invited onto the board. Everybody else on the board was either an astronomer or a high techie. So
I think
mhm.
with SETI, like my first ever knowledge of it, and this is, I think it's back in like 95 or 96, but whenever that Independence Day movie came out, I think like at the beginning of that movie, they had like the big satellite dishes or whatever where they picked up a signal or something. I think that was the first time I'd ever heard of SETI. And is that something that, obviously it was a movie, but is that something that they were looking into, like what they still do now? Because I know like they had the dishes and like they're searching for signals for like extraterrestrials or anything that they can find. But with the dishes and everything, is that something they still do today?
Yes, most assuredly. Pretty much every I can't even actually at the moment think of an exception, but pretty much every radio telescope in the world
Mm-hmm.
is involved in doing SETI at the moment.
Okay.
So even the Chinese, who have recently built the largest single dish radio telescope in the world, are dedicating that telescope to a lot of SETI research as well. So the hunt is on. In my book, Reinventing SETI, I'm arguing that the hunt is being done in a inefficient and backwards way, and consequently, we don't discover anything. Because let's face it, I mean, we've been doing SETI since 1960, although the cadence, the speed, the energy that's being put into it now, the money that's being put into it now dwarfs anything that we ever did in the past. So that more SETI is done today, every single day, than was ever used to be done in a whole year. So we're doing a lot of SETI, but we're not necessarily doing it in the right way, because we've already looked, certainly in a million stars, if you count background and foreground stars. And what we do, the standard protocol is to look at a star for 10 minutes. And then if you don't see anything or hear anything or record anything, you move on to the next star and the next star and the next star and the next star and the next star. So that's what's going on. But if the presumption is, and this is where my book really dives deeply into, is that ET is sitting on its home planet in a faraway star system, signaling to us from there. And I point out in my book that that's a dreadful strategy. That's, it's a stupid way to do business. ET would not be doing that. the much more efficient thing that ET would be doing is sending spacecraft, robotic probes from their solar system to our solar system to surveil us, to learn our languages from Sesame Street, to learn our maths from Khan Academy, to learn all the rest from YouTube. And then if they, after having surveilled us, then maybe they might communicate with us. But from here, within our own solar system. So ET is not out there, they're here. Now, this sounds like UFOs or UAPs as they're called today.
Right.
Like you said, the Independence Day spacecraft. But I'm coming from a different perspective altogether.
Right. Yeah.
I happen to come from the perspective of astronomy, and astronomy begins where the atmosphere ends. And so I personally don't know very much about UFOs or UAPs. I mean, just what I read in the newspapers, maybe a little more than that, but that's not my field. And honestly, to be absolutely honest with you, I'm skeptical of the reports that I've heard.
I think
But
I think a lot
yeah,
of
go on.
the
Mhm.
ones that are reported, I think they're actually just obviously man-made. I'm not thinking there's ETs flying around here. Like I would like to think that way, but for a lot of them, I think it's just misidentification.
I think everybody agrees that most of it's misidentification. But here's the key thing. Although I'm not a student of UFOs, I'm not a friend of UFOs in the sense that I don't believe in them necessarily. I mean, I'm open to any evidence that passes the smell test, but but my own theorizing leads to the complete conclusion, or the strong conclusion, that ET's best strategy is to send probes here, and that therefore they are here only if ET exists. An ET that actually wants to communicate with us, or learn about us, or know about us, or welcome us into the galactic club, or whatever they want to do with us, proselytize to us, frankly, destroy us, whatever's on their mind, they're here right now in our own solar system. And I come to that conclusion from from an entirely different point of view than the UFO people do. And yet I bolster them. So hopefully, instead of sending, hate mail and say, "Oh, Gertz, how can you be such an idiot not believing in UFOs?" Take comfort by the fact that even though I'm not one of you, I'm supporting. My research supports you, and we can get into the reasons why ET would send probes instead of transmitting from their own solar system.
Yeah, we can go into that, but before we do, I was going to ask you: have you seen the news recently where they've released saying there's something entering our solar system that they think was from outside our solar system, and
Yeah.
the media has turned it into something claiming it could be like a alien spaceship coming our way? And I was like, why did they have to spin it that way? It just seemed,
Well, it wasn't the media. It was a guy named Avi Loeb.
yeah,
Uh, Avi, I know very well. He's a professor of astronomy at Harvard,
Mhm.
and he was the guy who insisted that Oumuamua was an alien spacecraft. He was wrong about that, and he's completely wrong about this. It's it's a comet,
yeah.
is what it is. Now, we've got, as near as we can tell, something like 1 trillion comets orbiting our sun, but they're way past Pluto in what's something called the Oort cloud, and that Oort cloud stretches like 25% of the way to the nearest star. It's a huge cloud of comets. Um, the stars, as they rotate around the Milky Way, switch positions and jostle and so forth, because the gravity of everything affects the gravity of everything else. If another star or rogue planet, and we could talk about rogue planets, happens to get near to our comet field, as an example, or any other solar system's comet field, it can disturb it gravitationally and send them and kick comets out of the orbit and send them flying into interstellar space. Inevitably, those comets or asteroids, because it can happen to asteroids as well, make their way to our solar system and just happen to go through it. Uh, we've been Astronomers have predicted that we would see interstellar asteroids and comets for some time. And this one, called 3I/Atlas, completely fits the model for what a comet would look like. And in fact, the Hubble spacecraft is now looking at it, and we're determining it is a comet. It's going very fast. It's going about 60 kilometers a second, which is much faster than anything else in our solar system relative to our sun. That is the speed. But that's predictable too, because this comet, as it goes through the interstellar space, inevitably meets with some stars or planets and gets some kick, a gravitational slingshot, and does it enough times, because this comet could be billions of years old, does it enough time, and it gradually builds up speed as it makes its way through interstellar space. So it's a comet. But so and we're going to start seeing a lot more of these as new telescopes come online. The Vera Rubin telescope, which is just now getting started, will almost certainly find a lot of these, and we'll see them in a routine fashion. These are not spaceships, but spaceships are here. Okay, for one thing, these are pretty large objects. These could be 60 miles from one side, or a dozen miles, or 10 miles wide. These are very big. An alien spacecraft could be the size of a basketball. It could be the size of a school bus. I mean, we don't know, obviously, but there's no reason why it should be as large as that.
Right. Unless they're, I guess, bigger alien, like giants or whatever. But I can't see anything like that.
But this is another problem. Would they be squishy beings like us, little green men, if you will, or would they be robotic AI beings?
Yeah.
It's my contention, and I write about this quite a bit in my book, Reinventing SETI, that interstellar travel by squishy beings like us is so difficult and so onerous that, for all intents and purposes, they don't do it. It's so much easier and better and more efficient to send robots. And there are lots of reasons for this. So, for example, I mean, if the Voyager, which is leaving our solar system into interstellar space now, would take 105,000 years to get to Barnard star, our second nearest star. That would be like 4,000 generations of people. Okay, and that's every single one of them would, except for the very first generation and this very last generation, would be born, live their entire lives, and die on board this ship. Okay, can you imagine that every single atom would have to be efficiently recycled because there's no possibility of resupply?
Mm-hmm.
We can, and how vast that ship would have to be. Look at walk into somebody's quarters there on the ship, and you'll see that in the bathroom there's a toothbrush, and there's a cup, and some pharmaceuticals in the closet, and there's sheets and pillowcases and so on. Right, so you've got to have a toothbrush factory, a toothpaste factory, a glass factory. You've got to have a whole plantation for cotton and a herd of a flock of geese for the pillows, and on and on and on and on. And that's just for a bedroom. And so it's the technicalities of doing this are so awesome and so formidable, and the failure points so many. And it only takes one single failure point for the whole mission to go into disaster. So take, for example, the starting bacterial load and the starting viruses. They would have to be so perfectly balanced, so that one or another species, if you will, of bacteria or virus doesn't explode, or more likely mutate in a way that just destroys the entire mission. So it's and again, I write a whole chapter on the book about the impossibility of space travel by squishy beings.
I've always thought it would be more like even what we do here, like we send out machines, we send out probes, we do investigating, especially like in areas that we can't get to. Obviously, we can't travel through space. Whatever we do, we launch satellites, we launch these
Right.
probes out there. So if we're doing it, I've always assumed that if there's other intelligent beings out there somewhere, that they would probably be doing the same thing we are.
So totally true. I mean, we have sent interstellar spacecraft to the stars with 1970s technology. It's Pioneer and Voyagers. They're on their way to the stars. Okay, and they're not aimed at any particular star, but they could have been, or they could be, and they're off and running, and they will go basically forever. They'll just be out there, and that's with 1970s technology. Any aliens that we meet, make no mistake about it, will be eons more advanced than we are. And we can say that with an absolute certainty. We don't know very much about ET. We don't know what their intentions are towards us, but we do know this about them, that they are aeons more advanced than we are. And we can say this on very strong statistical grounds. The very first alien civilization might have arisen in our galaxy about 8 or 9 billion years ago. That would have the first rocky planets were formed approximately 12 billion to 13 billion years ago. And if it took 4 or 5 billion years for a civilization to arise on those rocky planets, that brings you to 8, 9 billion years ago. That's twice the age of our own solar system. These aliens would be so vastly superior to us. It's quite a head start. They've got billions of years of head start. And the chances of us meeting, statistical chances of us meeting another civilization that is also like us in our first 100 years or so of the technology to send and receive signals or send spacecraft and so forth, in the first 100 years is essentially statistically, for all intents and purposes, zero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're way in advance of us.
Do you think if we were sending out signals like we have been, and they were actually picked up by something, because the chances of a different type of civilization out there was to come across what we had here, do you think they'd come and look at us and they'd investigate what we are, or do you think they'd be more so inclined to not really care because of the distance and how long it would take? Like, how long do you think it would take for them to even receive something from us before they'd even know where we're even at?
Well, you're giving us very good reasons, Brandon, for giving ET very good reason to send probes here instead of trying to transmit, because they could have been sending their first probes to us like 4.5 billion years ago to check out our brand new solar system. They could be sending these probes at the speed of Voyager. It could take 50,000, 100,000 years, 1,000,000 years. It doesn't matter. In deep time, 1,000,000 years is like nothing to get here. But once it gets here, it can do actual science. It can study our solar system. It can study and realize that the third planet out is looking kind of promising. And then the fourth planet out, Mars, maybe as a biosphere. Okay, but then they send 100 million years later, they send another spacecraft and they see that Mars went dead, but this other planet, Earth, is now blossoming with some microbial life. That's worth checking out and keeping an eye on. And so they send probes once every 100 million years. That's all it takes, until they see that there's oxygenation, which indicates multicellularity, which now gets really interesting. Okay, and now for the last 2 billion plus years, they've been sending probes, let's say every 50 million years. And they've realized that multicellularity has grown into larger animals, and now they send them even more frequently. And now they actually let them stay in orbit around us, basically on a permanent basis, to constantly surveil us. And lo and behold, we light up, and they may have detected that we were technological, not just with the first television broadcast in 1950-ish, but rather they could have realized that we were growing towards technological competence 10,000 years ago, where they would have been able to detect agriculture. They certainly would have seen the pyramids go up, so they're on to us, and since, in my book, I talk about the galactic internet, and I specifically draw out what the schematics of a communication internet or network of probes would look like. But what I'm talking about is the probability there are probes around every star system, and they're in communication with each other. So as soon as agriculture is detected on Earth, the information is shot out to the probes around Alpha Centauri, our nearest neighbor, and Barnard Star, our second nearest neighbor, and those probes then send it out in other directions, and before you know it, the information about it is diffuse all over the galaxy.
Do you think it would be wiser for us to do the same thing rather than just broadcasting ourselves out to everything out there listening that, hey, we're out here? We should be investigating like what we're doing now, but not letting everything out there know that where we're at, because we don't know what type of civilizations are out there. If they're going
Absolutely, absolutely, Brandon. I think would be gross, uh, grossly malfeasant to send signals out to the galaxy at this point. We don't have any idea what we're doing there, and that's one of the reasons, by the way, that I give in my book for why it is that ET is not transmitting signals from its home planet. The reason, one of the probably the first and most important reason, is that it's dangerous.
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, ET may have good reason to know that there are bad actors in the galaxy, and when they transmit signals from their home planet, by definition, they tell everybody where they are.
Yeah.
Okay, when they send a probe, and even if that probe is studying our languages right now and eventually opens up a line of communication with us in the Queen's own English or in Mandarin or Urdu or something else, they don't have to reveal the coordinates of their progenitor civilization. The probes are, memory bank, because it's basically a robot, may not even have that information. Okay, it's dangerous. So that's one of the main reasons why they're not transmitting signals to us. They're sending probes instead.
As a kid, I always thought, yeah, it'd be great if the aliens were like friendly and they were here to help and all sorts of stuff like that. But as I've gotten older, I'm in my 40s now. I'm like, I don't trust them. If they're out there, I wouldn't want someone knowing where I live. Like even in today's standards with other people, like I don't want people knowing where I live. So why would I want a completely different civilization of non-humans to know where I live?
Well, we may have no choice about it, because if they're in our solar system right now, as I think
Yeah.
they are, then the gig's up. They know we're here. But we need to deal with them with both hands in our pockets. Okay, we can't assume that they're benign. It'd be nice to assume that they're benign, but when you look at the evidence for ET's intentions, you quickly discover that there is no evidence. Okay, we have the slightest idea whether ET is here to aggress against us, to save us, to proselytize, to simply trade with us, information being presumably the coin of the realm, whether they're here to lay down the law, the galactic law, and I can tell you what I think the galactic law is, but um, or or whatever they're here for, we really don't know. But we do need to treat them very, very, very cautiously. So they may be playing three-dimensional chess to our checkers, so to speak. So for that reason, I've called in my book, and this is, I started by saying I wanted to affect public policy. Um, we need to get our act together on Earth. We need to figure out today how we're going to be dealing with aliens if and when we meet them. We're looking for near Earth objects right now, asteroids and so on, that may crash into Earth, even though the probability of that is very, very low. It's been 65 million years since there was an extinction level asteroid impact that knocked out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. But so the chances of that happening are small, but it's worth studying and it's worth caring about it. Equally true, it's whatever you regard the chances of waking up tomorrow morning and finding that ET is transmitting to us from the distance of the moon or something. Whatever you think the chances are, you can't honestly say that the chances are zero. There is a chance that this is going to happen, and the way we need to deal with it is now. We need to form committees of experts to study this at great length, and the committee should be well financed and report to the UN Security Council. And I laid this out in my book, that a committee shouldn't be comprised just of astronomers. Let's perish that thought right away, but should be comprised of security experts, military people, diplomats, economists, behavioral biologists, evolutionary biologists, linguists, cryptologists, and on and on. Game theorists, they should have a prominent place at the table, I think, and on and on. And why do we need to study this urgently today? Because first of all, in the moment after our first detection of ET, especially if it's within our own solar system, we're going to be in a state of shock and befuddlement. If we leave it to our world leaders to deal with it in a vacuum and without no knowledge, no understanding, and nobody having ever thought about the subject, we're going to be in a world of trouble. Let me give you a couple of hypotheticals, okay? Just to give you an example. Let's say that I'm correct and that ET is here. They're right here in our own solar system. They may be at the distance of the moon. And we get a transmission in English that takes over, the Tinfoil Tales podcast or whatever. I mean, it passes what I call the interoculatory test, which means it smacks you right between the eyes. There's no doubt about it. It's ET. It's apparent to everybody. There's no equivocation. And ET says, "Here I am. I'm up here. I've got this nice probe, and I've come to give you all the technology and wisdom and science and of our advanced civilization. It's here for the taking. It's all recorded on our version of a hard drive or a thumb drive or something. It's in my cargo bay. Come up and get it." Whoa. Well, what are the Chinese going to do? What are the Americans going to do? They're going to have a race to get there first.
Right.
Okay. Elon Musk may race as a private party. And let's say that the Americans get there first, and we grab the hard drive and bring it back to Earth. What are the Chinese going to do? Aren't they incentivized to shoot that down, lest the Americans receive a cornucopia of technology that disadvantages them? And will that not then start a war? I mean, we've got to think this out, folks, and really act according to a treaty that needs to be written and devised. In my book, Reinventing SETI, I actually write a treaty. It's there. I adopt and adapt some of the current outer space treaties, and it's just meant to be a first draft to get the conversation going. So we need this kind of international thinking and this kind of international coordination. Let's say that, if you would, let me give you another hypothetical.
Sure.
Let's say that I'm wrong, that ET is not here, but rather one day we get a signal from a star and it's ET, and ET says basically the same thing. Hi guys, is anybody over there? We're over here. If there's anybody there, write us back, send us a signal so that we can send you all the great science and technology and everything. We're dying to meet you. Okay, great. Do we respond? Fair question. You would think the easy answer is, but I think Brandon, you're onto it. Is the easy answer is sure, of course we respond. We want all that wisdom. We want to get into conversation. No, they may be, they may be a malignant civilization that's echolocating. That's like a bat echolocating its next prey.
Yep.
It could be really dangerous to respond. Who gets to decide? And it could be really wonderful to respond. So who gets to make that decision? Is it the United Nations, Security Council, and if so, by 2/3 vote, by 3/4 vote? Is it the General Assembly? Is it by nations? Is it by populations? Is it 2/3, 3/4? Who knows? This stuff has never been talked about, never been decided. But it's urgent that we do that right away because if the answer is, if the collective decision is, and we're going to roll the dice and we're going to respond to ET, we need to make that response. We made to make that decision today, not after we receive a signal, because after we receive a signal, it's too late. As I said earlier, we look at each star for just about 10 minutes each, and then we move on to the next star. What if ET does the same thing? They transmit to a star, us, wait 10 minutes. Now you have to adjust for the speed of light. So if they're 100 light years away, 200 years later, we're talking about, but are they going to wait 200 years plus 10 minutes, plus 10 hours, 10 days, 10 weeks, to 10 years? Who knows? Our only possible correct strategy is if we decide we're going to send back a signal, to write the message today, and the second we get an actual signal from ET, from another star system, if that's the decision, we hit the send button immediately upon the receipt of that signal.
I just feel like if, just based off humanity, the way we are, I don't know if a civilization far more advanced than us would go the same route that we do, but I know just how people are around here. And if they need resources, they need something. If they look down upon us as not as advanced as they are they going to consider us an equal, or are they just going to come and take the resources that we have here and then go on to the next one?
Well, my own view on that is that they're not here even if they're malicious, they're not here for our resources. Water, it's ubiquitous. It's all over the place. We don't have anything here in our solar system that they don't have in their solar system. They're not coming here to eat us. I mean, Big Macs can't be that expensive in their home system. They're, we're probably incompatible they couldn't digest us. They're not here. They're not here in that respect, but they may be here to destroy us. Just flat out to destroy us. And they could, and for two reasons. One is they don't want the competition. Well, let's just say that's the real reason. They don't want the competition. So they basically will strangle every civilization that arises in its cradle, lest we become technologically savvy and destroy them first. So it's it's a real possible threat. I mean, and it's one of the main reasons why potentially we're not hearing anything, because everybody else is smart enough to keep their heads down, or they're already been destroyed. So ET may also be here simply to lay down the law, and the law may be just as simple as saying is two words. Don't come, stay still. You
Yeah.
move, you die, something
Right.
like that. Like the universal law would be you cannot leave your own star system. There is no colonization. That would make you a threat. Um, um, or colonization by what are called von Neumann replicators. They may be also um, forbidden. However, I want to add a positive note on this. ET, and I lay out this case in my book, Reinventing SETI. ET needs us, and we've got tremendous bargaining power with ET, and we shouldn't use it frivolously. Should be very careful about this. Um, what do they need us for? I posit a great sea of probes and that are acting not just as to do fundamental research on planet Earth, for example, but to act as communication relay stations or communication nodes, and they're constantly in touch with one another um, with narrow beam lasers, which would be efficient carriers of information from star to star. We don't. We're embedded in a cacophony of signals, and we're completely oblivious to it because they're narrow beams that miss us. They don't hit planet Earth. There's sort of like garage openers or the security system in a museum or something where we don't go through the lasers, and so we're unaware of it. But that system of nodes and communication nodes and probes uh, is so vast that no one civilization could possibly build it and maintain it. Uh, Ultimately, ET needs us to help maintain the intergalactic communication system, to build out probes and nodes, communication nodes in our factories and launch them.
Do you think that would be something that would happen within our lifetime? Because I know I've talked with other people and they think it's going to be not within our generation, but within the next 100 or something years, we might receive a signal. But do you think it's going to be sooner than what a lot of people are thinking? If there's one out there?
I haven't the slightest idea, and anybody else, uh, all I can say is anything. I'm going to add just one note to this conversation, but before saying, in effect, we don't know, and your personal guess is as good as the next person's
Right. Yeah.
personal guess. However, there is something that concerns me, and I'm going to lay out here on the table. Um, if ET exists and ET wants to learn, a curious ET that wants to learn about the galaxy and wants to communicate with other civilizations, then they are here and they're here right now. They've had billions of years to get here. They're here. I don't know where they are. They could be sitting on an asteroid somewhere. They could be on the moon. They could be in orbit around the sun, but they're here. So they're decoding us. So there are two possibilities. Unless they're just here to lurk, to eavesdrop on us and have no intention. They're uploading all the information from our internet and have no intention of giving anything back in return, which is possible. But as I said, it's not probable because I think that they want our assistance in building out the network, and they want to lay down the galactic law. But um, if they are here, the question is, when will they make contact with us? Well, there are two possibilities. One is after they decoded us, and they're in the process of decoding us right now. We think that their super intelligence or that their onboard computing capacities are so immense, but but still, it takes time. I mean, I know that E.O. Wilson, the great etymologist from Harvard, spent a career studying ants. At the end of his great career, he finally understood something about the chemical communication systems of ants. We're more complicated than ants.
Mhm.
Okay, it's tough to decode us now, but that's so it may just take time, and when they're finished decoding us, they'll open up a line of communications that'll meet, as I said, the interoculatory test. It'll smack us between the eyes. We'll all know it's there, and we're off to the races. Alternatively, they may either not have the onboard capability to fully decode us, and or they need permission to make contact from their home base. And so they may be funneling vast streams of data back to their home star system for deeper analysis and or for permission to open up a channel of communication with us. Well, if their home civilization is 2,000 light years away, that's going to be 4,000 years before we hear from them. 2,000 because it takes ET 2,000 years to send a signal to them, and the home civilization 2,000 more years to send it back. So we're not going to hear from them for 4,000 years from now, and it's very frustrating. But but they're dealing in deep time. They're dealing in where millions of years are like nothing. So they couldn't care less that we have to wait for another 4,000 years. That may be the solution to why we're not getting anything.
I've kind of wondered if it's just basically exactly what you said, is like it's a distance thing, because the universe is so vast that sending signals and receiving signals from star systems is going to take, even at the speed of light, unless they're like right at one of the closest stars, which I think is still like, isn't it? How many light years away is the closest star to Earth?
4.2.
So if they were from that star system, it's still going to take 4.2 years just to even get a signal to there to back to us. That's 8 years. But if you think about all the other distances out there from other star systems, then it could take thousands to millions of years before we receive anything.
Well, not millions, but thousands, yes, because the galaxy is 100,000 light years from one side to the other, so they'll be much closer than the furthest reach of the galaxy. Um, but so it's not going to be millions of years, but it could definitely be thousands, certainly hundreds, and it's frustrating, but it's unfortunately the reality.
That is, I've talked with someone else before, and they said that, and again, this is just someone's opinion, but they did research, but they think the ETs aren't even as advanced as what we're considering. They're only like maybe 20 to 50 years more advanced than us, and I don't know where they come up with that determination, but he was adamant about
they're
that.
right. They're right and they're wrong. They're not more advanced than us if the key metric is basketball. Okay, so in other words, sure, there are things that we're going to do better than ET. Okay, playing basketball or whatever, because even a dumb shark swims a lot better than I do. So we're going to we will excel over ET in some fashion or another. However, when it comes to science and technology, they're not just a little bit more advanced than us. They're way more advanced than us.
Is there anything, I'm looking through some like this Drake equation. I'm not familiar what that even is. Is that, because down here it said something to where you believe it's holding us back, that and the Fermi's paradox.
Right. So let's take the Drake equation first. The Drake equation is often considered to be the second most famous equation in science, next only to E equals mc squared. It was devised by Frank Drake. Frank Drake ran the very first SETI experiment in 1960, and was active in the field until his death just a few years ago in his 90s. Frank was a very dear friend of mine, a lovely, lovely human being. But he wrote an equation. He ran the first SETI experiment in 1960, and then in 1961, he and Carl Sagan and a few other people organized their first conference or symposium to discuss issues of SETI. So Frank, I think really on the back of an envelope or something, wrote down an equation that would say, which would give you the result of n being the number of civilizations in the galaxy. And if you could fill in all the factors on the other side of that, n equals, and then he had a number of factors, and I can list them off for you, but I don't think time allows. If you multiply all these factors together, it gives you the n. So, for example, the n of planets is the number of planets, which is one of the factors, is very, very large. However, the number of communicating civilizations, which is another factor, is very, very small. Just a very small fraction of those planets. You multiply that together with a number of other things, and you end up with your n. In my book, Reinventing SETI, or on my website, johngertz.com, which is my author's website. It's just my name, johngertz.com. I go through lengthy arguments. I take the factors one by one by one by one, and basically say they're ready for the ash heap of history. The whole thing needs to be scrapped and reconsidered. And I say this even though Frank was a very, very close friend of mine. Nonetheless, it's time for us to move on from the Drake equation. Unfortunately, I think it's a program in itself. It's exactly why that is. So I would encourage people to go to my website, or to pick up a copy of my book, and it's laid out in great detail.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it should be accessible by laymen. It's even though it is an equation. Middle school math is more than adequate for the job. Sixth grade math is fine. It's just multiplying a few things together.
The one last thing that I had to ask is, and it's a hypothetical question, but obviously, with this being, you can see the graphics or whatever. What do you think when people are reporting that they've seen extraterrestrials or they've experienced? Do you think that's actually something that's a possibility, or do you think there's something else? Do you think there's actually beings that have been coming here?
I haven't seen evidence that persuades me. I'll tell you why. Okay. First of all, it's not my field. And therefore, I'm waiting to just open up the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or USA Today and seeing on the front page, aliens have been discovered. In other words, listen, when I know a subject deeply, I'm often disappointed with the mainstream press, but, I understand democracy deeply, and I'm disappointed with democracy too, but it's the best thing we've got. Same thing with the mainstream press. So that's one sort of safeguard for me. Let the reporters, the thousands of reporters out there, see if they can dig up something that is real enough to put on the front page. But I've got some other specific problems with what I'm looking at. One is with the photographic evidence. If we all carry around great cameras in our pockets, where are the great photos of these things? Now you could say, okay, well, an iPhone is going to take a great photo of a UFO that's 10,000 feet above you or something. Okay, fair point. But I would be impressed if 40 strangers to one another all took the same picture of the same thing, or if 40 strangers to one another were all sitting on window seats in an airplane and all shot a picture of the same thing out the window. Even if the quality of each picture is not great, the fact that they all did it would impress me a lot. I don't know why our satellites aren't seeing these UFOs. I mean, they're looking down on Earth all the time. They see every single airplane. Well, why aren't they seeing the UFOs? With all the great accelerations that these UFOs are purportedly achieve, where are the sonic booms? Matter flowing through the air moves air molecules. They bump together, create friction, and there's your sonic boom. We don't hear them. So, I don't buy conspiracy theories. The oldest one, of course, is the 1947 crash landing in Roswell, which has been kept a secret and all that in Area 51. But you know what? There have been 14 presidential administrations since then. Thousands of people in each of these administrations would have to have been in on the secret. Not one of them leaked anything to the New York Times. Not one of them made a deathbed confession. And And as far as the presidents are concerned, Jimmy Carter ran to the microphone breathlessly when they thought he discovered a Martian microbe. And Donald Trump, come on, you love Donald Trump or you hate Donald Trump. I think we can all agree that Donald Trump wouldn't hide that from us.
No,
So
I think he would brag about it.
So I'm not buying the conspiracy theories either. Anyway, so that's my problem. But so your listeners can all write hate mail. Oh, how could Gertz be so damn stupid? Fine, fair enough. But take heart in the fact that even though I'm not a UFO person, I'm coming to the same conclusion that they're here. They're in our solar system. It's just I haven't seen the evidence for them yet. That smacks me between my eyes. Anyway.
No, I respect that opinion. I've never seen an alien myself. I've seen weird things in the sky, but that doesn't mean it's not man-made or it's from here. So until I try and remain skeptical on a lot of things, so until I have my own personal experience or I witness something myself, it's just kind of, I don't know what to think. But
yeah, fair enough.
Well, John, it's been a pleasure talking to you. But before we wrap this up, I would like for you to let everyone know where they can get your book.
Well, I mean, you can get it at Amazon, or if you go to my website, johngertz.com, there are links to either Amazon or from Oxford University Press where you can get it directly. I presume you can get it at bookstores, and it's available on Kindle as well, and has just been released. So it is written for laymen. It's frankly, if I have to say so, it's written with a lot of good sense of humor and a little bit of snarkiness and so on. I've tested it with my layman friends who all seem to love it. So it's and while at the same time it's serious, it's fact based, and I know Oxford University Press, which is a leading academic press, sent it out to be reviewed by 4 astronomy professors, and all of them said they would use it in their classrooms. So it's, on the one hand, it's serious, but on the other hand, it's completely readable by any layman.
I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out. I had a copy that was sent to me by the press lady, so I haven't had a chance to sit down and read it yet, but it is on my agenda to get done, so I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Okay, thanks so much. I appreciate it. And Brandon, it's really been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure too. I'm happy to have you on here, and maybe sometime again in the future we'll have you back on.
Okay, all the best.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. If you'd like to be a guest on Tinfoil Tales, remember to send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com or go to tinfoiltales.com and go to the contact section. Make sure to follow me around on all the social medias. And just remember, truth comes at a cost. Are you willing to pay the price?
I heard a story late last night about something lurking along the wood line. Huge footprints, strange lights in the sky. They claim it's nothing, but I know they lie. It's easier to laugh in my face, but something about this makes me say, what if it's real? What if they knew? What if the answers are coming from you? Spinning stories, wasting my time, hearing voices, is it all in their minds? They can call me crazy, but I just want some proof. What if it's true? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil Tales, pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. They see a dog man walking, or maybe a mothman flies above the buried giants, hidden beneath the lies. They say it's just stories, it's all make-believe. Fairy tales for the things we can't perceive. They want to keep us blinded, they want to break our will. But I'm not buying it, I'm not swallowing another pill. Force-fed poison, the lies we're made to believe. What if the truth could set us free? Alien signals traveling through time, secret space programs erasing their minds. They call them crazy, but I just need some proof. What if it's true? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. They laugh, they lie, we all could die, but the signs are there if you open your eyes. Aliens, cryptids, demons, ghosts, the Nephilim too. What if it's me? Or what if it's real? What if it's real? What if it's true? What if the world's not what we knew? Tinfoil tales pulling me in, a story that starts where the logic ends. What if it's real? What if it's true? The answers are waiting, they're waiting for you. It's all in our heads, it's all in our minds. These voices can't be silenced, the truth must rise. Tinfoil tales, it's pulling me through. What if it's real? What if it's true?